My life has changed a lot. I went to Brandywine High School. And a lot of people around me started dying because of heroin overdoses. And I want to stress the fact to you that please do not try heroin. I'm not condoning you to try it, nor am I telling you to go out and try it. I'm not trying to start anything. I'm not trying to start anything. If you know somebody going, my brother was a heroin addict. I know how it feels. Once an addict, always an addict. It never goes away.
My daughter Shania was just a wonderful child growing up. She was sweet. She had a lot of friends, and I got to know like a lot of her friends and their mothers, and she went to a lot of sleepovers. Everybody that I know of always says she was so polite, and you know, I hope that I instilled that into her.
Shania as a person, she was just like really fun to be around. She would always just be like the person who would be like the comic relief of the group, you know? She kind of like went with the flow, but at the same time she like had her own personality that was just like, it's kind of hard to describe because she was just indescribable in like the best possible way because she was just an amazing person.
Shania and Aja met each other when they worked at the local ice cream shop here in Topton, and they just gelled.
When I first met Shania, we instantly hit it off. It's kind of hard for me to make connections with people, so when Shania and I made that first connection, it really hit me as something special, and she was special to me from day one. Shania is just so accepting of people. She has such an open personality, and she really just like accepted me for who I was, and we just could always be really goofy together.
Junior year, I was anorexic, attempted suicide 3 times since my junior year, depressed, very anxious now. Went to at least I want to say 3 hospitals. Most of them were overnight stays.
She did suffer from anorexia at one point, and it was hard because she lost a lot of weight, and I didn't even realize it until one day that she came home, and it was early in I think her maybe freshman year in high school, and she said, boy, it hurts when I'm sitting on those wooden chairs, like right on my back. And I'm like, oh, well, I said, let me see. I said, maybe you have a pilonidal cyst. And we went to the doctor, and after they weighed her, they're kind of looking at me, and we're kind of sitting there. And finally her doctor says, that's not a pilonidal cyst. That's her tailbone that's bothering her. And her heart rate was low and her respirations were low as well at the time. At one point, I couldn't find a hospital that took her insurance, and I sat day after day after day on the computer trying to find somebody that would take her insurance, just to get her in, to get her help, because she was slowly dying right in front of my eyes. In fact, one night she called me in and she said, if you don't get me help soon, I'm gonna die. So I finally found a hospital down in near Philly, out on the outskirts, Brandywine, that they actually said, I wish you would have contacted us first because we take your insurance and we have an eating disorder program. So we took her down that night. My son basically carried her into the place. She was that dehydrated, and just didn't have any energy anymore. She was gray when we got her there. I mean, she was ashen. She was like, I mean, she truly was at death's door. Their doctors suggested 3 months of bed rest, which she was not even allowed to get up to like come into the living room to watch TV. So we had a TV in there for the only thing that she could do was get up, obviously, to go to the bathroom and to eat dinner, because we did not want her to be eating by herself. So we wanted her at the table. After 3 months, she did really well, and she was allowed to go back to school. Then she kind of slid into some depression because she was always afraid that people were judging her. She didn't like going to lunch, especially because, heaven forbid, somebody saw her eat. They might say something like, well, I can't believe you ate that much, or, and so she had body issues, and like I said, she did have some depression too.
At home, or when she was just with me, she could really be herself, and sometimes you saw like worse sides of her, not in like a bad way, but just like sides that you probably wouldn't imagine came out like when she was with her friends.
She was happy. She was a cheerleader. She she was in the drama club. There wasn't anything that she wasn't going to try. Everyone that saw her in school and everything saw the bright, sunny side of her. It was when she got home and like life closed in on her, and she had so much what she thought were expectations, that she had to be perfect and all this. But I saw the dark side. I saw the depression. I saw the crying. I saw the actually I would call them like fits of almost rage. When she was afraid that she was not going to get everything done. She got healthy again. She was back to a healthy weight, but then she kind of, she still had body issues, and I think that is when like depression set in, and then it got a little scary. She would talk about killing herself. At least at one point in high school, she went to her therapist and told her therapist if she was to kill herself, what she was going to do. And that drew red flags from her therapist. And so her therapist said, I think she needs more intense therapy than I can give her.
I was listening to the song Daniel, and I worked with a Daniel who had a heroin overdose and died. He went missing Thursday night, and I worked with him Thursday night. So it was hard when I learned that he was missing. And I told my mom, I said, because I knew that he was doing heroin, so I told my mom, I was like, he's probably dead. Because the heroin around here is getting really bad, because people are lacing it with so much stuff. And lo and behold, the next day I found out he was dead. It really got to me because I worked with him, and I always hear, his name is Daniel, so I always hear the song by Elton John, Daniel, and I heard it tonight at work, which made me think of doing a diary, maybe getting some of this stress out. So it really hurts.
It was completely unexpected. I mean, I know when I worked with Shania and Daniel at Herman's, every single girl who worked at Herman's had the hots for Daniel, including Shania and I. And Shania definitely had a connection with Daniel. They talked not just at work, but outside of work a little bit. And I would say that when Daniel died, Shania took it pretty hard at first. I don't want to say that Daniel was the cause of Shania starting her heroin use, but I definitely think it like opened the doors to like a new thing for her.
I did notice that she was doing drugs. I think my son told me that he had heard she was doing it. And I immediately went into her room and I just started yelling at her because she knew that her brother was addicted, and I'm like, what were you thinking? And you know that once you start this drug, there's no going back. You are addicted. The first time you use, you are addicted.
When I found out Shania was first using heroin, I didn't think much of it. I know that sounds really bad, but at first I thought it was just like, oh, it's just like a social thing. It's a stage that she's gonna grow out of. But then I saw it was progressing more and more.
And then around Christmas of last year, in fact, it was Christmas Day, and we had a skirmish that day. Her dad dropped her off, and her other grandparents kind of saw that something wasn't right. So I talked to her, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna get my shit together.
Obviously, her mom and I tried to help her, but there's only so much you can do.
I noticed that it was really getting bad, and I said, I think you need some sort of rehab. And she goes, no, I don't want to do that. She goes, but if I could just take off a week or two from work, I think I could do it here at home. So that's what we agreed to do. And she was strong because her brother had been in rehab shortly after that, and said that she was his hero because she could do it at home. And she did for at least 8 months. I think she was clean.
And I did try to obviously talk Shania to get help, and she was receiving help. And then she'd be clean for a certain amount of time, and then just like that, once an addict, always an addict. It's always going to be in your brain, and she'd just go back to using it.
The day that she passed was like any other day. I had to work. Got up around noon to go take my shower before work, and her bedroom is right next to the bathroom. When I finished showering, I opened the door to let some of the steam out, and that's when I saw her sitting on the edge of her bed, but her face was down in her lap. I started screaming her name, and I went to pick her up, and she was sweaty, and she was really, really sweaty. And it was a hot day, but I started shaking her, and I started hitting her on her back. Didn't know what to do, and I knew that it was an OD. I knew that she had OD'd because when I first picked her up, she still had the tourniquet on her arm. The spoon and the needle were laying right in front of her. I finally laid her down on the bed where she had been sitting up. I laid her down, but I ran and got the phone, and I woke my fiance up, and I said, you've got to talk to 911. They already had told me I had to get her on the floor and start CPR. So I slid her down off the bed, and I started giving her CPR, and then I would do my breaths. I knew that she didn't have a pulse because I had checked her pulse. And she coughed a little bit, and she threw up a little bit, so I thought, okay, good, we might have this, I don't know. And then the first paramedic showed up, and he started to bag her and said, well, to me, that, Mom, I'm going to need your help. I'm going to need you to squeeze the bag. And the next voice I heard was, Mom, I'll do that. I'll take over from here. And I look up, and it's a minister. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, it was just like that. It was like it was meant to be. More of the paramedics started to come in then, police, and the minister and I, we kind of went outside and we're talking a little bit. But I kept saying, is she gone? Is she gone? Because for some reason I just kind of knew. And then finally, Pastor went in, and he comes back out and he goes, yeah, they just pronounced her. And I started to cry. And just as I was calming down, Pastor's sitting there and he goes, oh, there's a little feather or something on your arm. And he went to take it off, and I'm like, no. I said, that's Shania's little baby feather. So I kept that feather. I still have that feather. I have to believe that she was on her way, and she was sending off a wing to me and saying, You're gonna be okay, Mom. Heroin was not what killed my daughter. For weeks after her death, I thought it did. And the toxicology report finally came back, and the coroner called, who proceeded to tell me that there was no heroin in her system, that it was all fentanyl. When I found out that it was fentanyl, it was like reliving her death all over again. You finally get used to the idea that it was heroin that killed her, and then a few weeks later they call and say, sorry, it wasn't that, it was fentanyl.
When I found out it was fentanyl, I was devastated, because I think honestly if it was heroin, she'd be here right now with us.
Everyone was surprised. I mean, I had to pick my chin up off the floor when she told me that, because that just made it worse. You know? Isn't gonna bring her back, I get that, but whoever sold that to her might as well have just given her a gun and said, shoot yourself. And if you're currently using, reach out to family, get yourself clean in any way that you can, because your parents love you, your family loves you, your friends love you. They all want you here on this earth. They don't want you 6 feet under. They don't want to go to your funeral. You shouldn't be robbed of your life. You belong here on earth to do great things. So if you're using now, please take my advice and get yourself clean. Please.
My biggest advice to people who are using right now is to find help. You know, you have to tell people. You can't just leave it bottled in, and you can't blame yourself for what has happened. You just have to reach out and ask for help.
And as parents, if you think they might be using something, even if it's pot or, just be vigilant. Be vigilant, but don't come down on them hard, because it coming down on them hard isn't going to help the situation. It could just make it worse. Some of the signs parents should look for are agitation, depression, sleeping a lot. In the case of my daughter, acne. With almost any drug, it doesn't do your complexion very good. And as far as if you see that, wait till they go to school if they're still in school. and look places that you never would think of looking. A tiny hole in the wall, the heat vent, obviously between the mattresses, under the bed, because these are all places where I found needles and paraphernalia and others that have told me to look for it at these spots too. My heart goes out to any parent that has a son or a daughter that's going through addiction. There's not enough good, affordable rehabs out there. But if you find one, get your son or daughter in there. At least, at the very least, get them to talk to somebody. Be honest with them. This drug will kill you. There's only two ways that it can go with heroin, and that is in jail or 6 feet under. We're a very small town, but we've been hit hard with the epidemic. So I guess I just want to bring more awareness that she was bright. She was a good kid, and this nasty drug took her life.
I think people should see that heroin did not define Shania. Just because that was a choice she made does not make her a bad person. And I think a lot of people have obviously a negative outlook towards heroin, but it doesn't define a person, Shania was so much more than just a user.
I wanted her to be happy, but I knew that drugs weren't making her happy. They were just masking her pain. I used to like going to the soccer games that she cheered at, and then she was in the drama club, and anything basically that me and her did together I enjoyed so very much. And that's, I think, what's really hard now, is that she's gone. I don't even want to go shopping anymore. I don't want to even go to lunch or anything because she's not there. Am I a bad mom? I don't know. I mean, I knew that she was using. Should I have done more? Yeah, maybe, but I'm not sure how much more I could have done. It's just like with my son. They're adults, and if they don't want to go into a rehab, you can't force them. I wish I would have done more, but it is what it is now, and I've made peace with myself and with my daughter and my decisions. I just want to express that my daughter Shania was a wonderful daughter. She had her problems growing up as she got into her teen years, and all the running around that I had to do and going trips back and forth to Philadelphia and so forth. But I tell you what, I wouldn't trade it for a minute if I could have her back. And her story's not over yet. I'm going to continue to move on and share my story and my life with my daughter Shania in hopes that it just helps one person. I want to see people and teens be luckier than my daughter was.
I just want to say something to Shania because I definitely feel her presence right now with us. That I just I miss you and I think about you every single day.
I hope she's still with me, because I look for signs all the time. I miss her so much. She was my baby, but she was my friend.